This episode is sponsored by Zenro Clothing Co. Pick up your tees and or accessories at zenroclothingco.com and be sure to use offer code Socrates at checkout for 20% off select items. Also, if you're not into spending the money, just check out the Zenrail radio playlist. zenrailclothingco.com, music for your everyday. This episode also sponsored by The Portian Bakery. If you're located in the Portian area of Scarborough, Toronto, be sure to check out The Portian Bakery, say what's up to Arville, and pick up a donut or two. Baked daily, crafted with love. This episode also sponsored by Podbean. Podbean is the podcasting platform of choice. It's the one that me and Vish use, and is great, you know, if you're looking to start that DIY podcast yourself. Definitely check out Podbean. Use the link podbean.com/SocraticGamers and gain 1 month of unlimited podcasting for free. Test it out, build that content. Anyone could podcast, right, Vish?
Yep.
Start a podcast and get your ideas out there. All right, enjoy the episode. All right, before we jump into the we were just chatting about like the indigenous stuff. I should say congratulations, Vish. Congratulations on your awesome news and your next steps in life. Just want to throw that out there. That out there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so should we jump into the name thing? Because I thought that was pretty interesting. You're like, all right, just continue the conversation before we hit start.
So whenever, because we were just watching an interview on TVO, right?
Yeah.
So the guy's name was Bob. I forgot his last name, but that's not his real or given name from his parents, right?
Right.
So he has an Indian or indigenous name.
Uh-huh.
And when they are leaving the reserve, I guess the Indian agent, that's what they called them. I guess they gave they ask your name and you say he told him his given name, and then your name is now Bob this.
Right,
so when they
right.
leave, they're given a white kind of name.
So okay, and then I was likening it to like how the Chinese people, they have their Chinese name and then they have their like white name,
mm-hmm.
you know, and it's interesting because like even with,
but I feel like that's a bit different because they got to choose their.
No, for sure. At least they got to choose. Like there's a subtlety there.
There's
I was gonna say like even with my own name, right? I always felt kind of weird growing up. Now it's fine because it's like we live in that kind of society with diversity. But I distinctly
mm-hmm.
remember growing up and being like, oh, my name's Ervil James. Like my parents gave me like a white addition to my first name,
mm-hmm.
you know, whereas like I have an uncle named Ervil as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like growing up and then people being like, oh, like Orville. Oh yeah, you guys are going to hear Athena whine during this one because Tara left. So like even people being like, oh, your name's Orville, because I was surrounded by like Caucasians, right? And I'm like, no, not like, they're like Orville Redenbacher or something, right? It's like very similar, you know? I was like, no, it's like Ervil. But then now if you were to do that, that'd be like, oh, that's kind of racist of you, or like that's kind of ignorant of you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've actually evolved into that kind of society where you can be more of your own culture. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel like that's what's happened in the recent years.
Yeah, which I do
not when we
appreciate.
were growing up.
Yeah, no, totally. It wasn't when we were growing up, which is interesting because with the indigenous people and the Chinese people, and then like even with my second first name,
mm-hmm.
it's like you had to have some sort of white name, you know, to not feel weird. I'd go by James for a while, but I was like, that's weird. That's too, you know, odd for me.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like it's like that's even a subtle colonial aspect to our lives that we don't even think about, you know, like our names.
Yeah. But I mean, I get it in the sense that I think it's a bit. I get it in the sense that we're kind of coming into their world.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? It's like
they developed it.
Yeah. But I'm saying like by saying your name, they're not going to be able to say it properly, right? So
But rather than like learning how to say it or like.
No, I get that, but it's more like I understand that, but it's like each time you have to teach somebody.
I know. Yeah. Totally.
Right.
It was,
versus
really
like a name that they're already used to.
Yeah. Totally. Actually, that's why I went with BJ for a while, for like a long time, because it's like what they call me. Like you call me BJ, right?
Yeah.
And like that's my parents' other name for me,
Mhm.
and I went with that because that's easier than like Ervil.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
although it sounds simple, like you wouldn't believe how many times like people messed it up, like Yervil, you know, or like Orville.
That's what I'm saying. It's like
No, but like even like the subtlety of it. If I even at Starbucks now, I don't even say, I just go with James for everything, because it's like that is a structurally understood name. You know?
Yeah. But also like some of these, like even my name, it, like written in the original, I guess, what they call it, script. It's like they have, I don't want to say it's like, you know how like the French words have like accents on it?
Yeah.
So there's like some words will sound, if you can read that, like written in an accent format, but we don't write in accent format in the English, British English.
Yes. I see.
So you can't
can add the subtlety.
Can't add the subtleties to how you say a name.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I always thought of like just the French who do that, but you're right. Like other cultures do that. They add like,
or they have, well, yeah, the way their writings are done like that, right? So you have the accent, but if you're converting it to British English doesn't have the accent, so
that's why they can't.
So they can't really.
Tell.
Yeah.
True. Is it like a or an
so it's like it's like spelling out like my dad's name. It's pronounced Ashok, but it's ASH, so it's Ashok, right? In English, it's like
right.
But if it was, you know what I mean? It's like if there was an accent thing on the A, maybe they could understand that as
like not ah. Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Very subtle, but like these are the traces of like, because when people talk about like systemic colonialism, I don't want to say systemic racism, because I don't like racism is like, okay, so racism is just the idea that one culture or race of individuals is higher than another, right? Like, but I don't really see it like that, because we have that in like one culture as well. It's just caste systems, right? Like, so it's like kind of racism. So, but it's more like this is systemic colonialism, like the conquering of one culture and then their, I guess, evidence or their like traces are built into everything we do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Jokoi had a joke about that. I was just telling you that I was going to bring it up, but he had a joke where he like called out somebody from the crowd that looked like black, and he's like, "Oh, where are you from?" And the guy's like, "I'm Filipino," and he's like, "No way." And he's like, "You're from the mountains, aren't you?" And the guy's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "What's your last name?" And then he said it, and then Joko was like laughing. He's like, "Yeah, because of the way you look, you don't have a Spanish last name. Like us light-skinned Filipinos, like essentially the Spanish came in and they like colonized the whole area. So they weren't like, the British weren't the only colonizers, right?
No,
it was like
no.
the Spanish.
That's why it's European colonizers.
Totally,
European is generally the term, because India wasn't just only British. Like certain parts were French, I believe, because they have French dishes in some places, and then Portuguese as well.
Yeah. Okay, so those were like, so the Europeans were like colonizers, right? And he was saying that the indigenous stayed in the mountains. They saw the boats coming. They're like, we're not leaving the mountain. And that's why that's why, like, if you, like, it's just a running understood thing in Filipino culture that if you're dark, you're from the mountains. So when he said that, we all got the joke. Because if you're Filipino, right? He's like, oh, you're from the mountains, aren't you? But like a regular person wouldn't get that, right? But like, if you go to the mountains, like, Filipinos are like, they look like black people, you know?
Well, they're like, I would say that maybe the natives, right? Or like the indigenous. They're like the indigenous. Kind of like, would they look, are they similar to like the indigenous of Australia?
No. They're like if I showed you a photo, you'd be like, oh, they're like, not African, but they're like kind of African.
Yeah, that's a little bit of the indigenous of Australia.
Okay.
Or like,
I'm thinking about the indigenous that look like Samoan.
No, not the Samoan. No, okay. There's
like indigenous. Like,
yeah.
Right, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it's essentially the same thing. It's like you look at them and you'd think that they were like kind of African, but
yeah, I think they've done like DNA testing and stuff. It's like,
turns that they're African.
Like very closer to. I don't quote me on that, but I'm like.
No, but that makes sense. I remember the leaving the Great Migration or whatever, the human journey, and then they came out of Africa and then they spread throughout the world. So of course, like the indigenous people from those areas would look African if we follow the science, right? So so with that, he was like saying that all of us light-skinned Filipinos, we all have Spanish last names. And my last name is Villarreal, right? So it is a Spanish last name. And when he said that, it like clicked, you know, because it's like, this is the evidence of colonialism right here, where it's like, you came and you kind of wiped out one race, like all the indigenous from the Philippines are in the mountains now, and they like kind of stay in the mountains because they didn't want to be assimilated.
Yeah.
Just like the indigenous people of Canada.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I always ask that, like you obviously identify as a person of color, right?
Sure.
Like obviously, right? Because you're like Indian.
Yeah.
Not like native, but like you're actually Indian. Like not like indigenous. Like you are.
This is the confusion.
No,
I know.
Yeah. Indigenous now. So you're like actually Indian, right? And I was asking.
But that's why there was that racist line before, right? Not the dot, not the feather.
Yeah, dot, not feather. Yeah. Oh, that's Russell Peters, right? That's his job.
I don't know if it was okay. I don't know.
Oh wait, actually, speaking of corrections, Ravi, you corrected me on this one, and you're right. It's not Jesus who said an eye for an eye will go blind. We'll make the whole world go blind. It's Gandhi.
Okay.
Yeah, just want to throw that out there. He's like, make sure you mention that. I'm like, all right, I will. You're right, because in the Bible it said an eye for an eye, but then Gandhi fixed it. So it's like, leave it to the
Continue
Hindus
the sentence
to fix the Christian mistake, bro. But all right, so were you searching like a picture of?
Yeah. If you wanted to see the Aboriginals.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so
these are Australians.
Those are Australians?
Yes.
Oh, they look African, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's also similar to like Filipino people. Like maybe they did spread, and
that's what I'm saying. They spread through that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, so you identify as a person of color, right? So only recently did I actually start identifying as a person of color. Like I'd actually check it off, right? Because growing up, this is actually really interesting. Growing up, I was told not to do that because it'll pull you down. Like by my parents, like, oh, don't really mark that because like people.
I don't know if I've ever marked that though.
Where have university applications, stuff like that?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it was more like you were so evidently a person of color that your parents were like, just accept it. Whereas my parents were kind of like.
I've never had to talk like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just like past experiences. Because my dad, like when he came to Canada, he was like, people were so racist to him. You know?
I don't know. My dad never talked about when he came because he studied here, right?
Yeah.
But my dad's joke was always that their food was too bland.
It's true though, right? Like, yeah. There's no.
That's why he was looking for a roommate that knows how to cook Indian food. Because he didn't know how to cook Indian food. Yeah, because he couldn't eat the white food.
See, speaking of that too, actually, like, so Joe Coy's other thing, his thing was, well, I'll get into the actual specifics of it, but it was very centered around race as well. And it was fascinating because he said, like, his mom came to Canada and was looking for Filipino people to surround herself with because, like, she had no Facebook, right? And there wasn't back then, right? So, like, you look for people of your own culture so that you can have something from back home. And it makes sense, like that is why you have pockets within Toronto as well of like people who congregate together, right? And you always wonder about that, like you have your what is that thing called, the Gokuran? You do like the
you mean like the community thing, like Konkani or Kannada Sangha, that type of thing,
right? So you guys collect together, right? And we have like Filipino stuff like that too, where you collect together. And it's like, of course, within an environment when you come in where you don't know anyone and you are experiencing racism, like now it's cool to be different, you know, but back then it really wasn't a good thing. It was like very racist, you know.
I guess, but I don't know. I've forgotten. I just didn't experience it as much, really.
I think it's more because like my mom doesn't really talk about it.
I was in a lot of things. I did scouts.
No, but I think it's the temperament of your parents though.
Maybe, yeah. Like I'm saying, I was in scouts filled with white people.
Yeah, okay.
I was in ice hockey as a kid. I did things that were like that were Canadian.
Right, totally, yeah. And
so like, I felt very Canadian in that sense.
Right, because they never broached that with you, right? Whereas like my dad's pretty hot, like not now, but he was hot tempered, and he said he got into like a lot of fights, like at work. You know, like fights, right, you know, over his like race.
Yeah.
And then, but like your dad's very chill, so maybe he was just like, they're just being themselves. You know what I mean? Like maybe they just took it different.
Yeah, you can take it
like that too.
You can take it differently, and depends on how you look, how you view your experience of the world. It's like, I mean, there could be racial elements that could happen, but they're just,
like
they're. I think it's more like individual. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
like it's an individual person doing that versus it's not a systemic thing, right? Because his view was like, everyone is
would
treated
be-
equally. You can do things.
Your dad.
Yeah, everyone is treated equally in the sense that you can get things done, like with the government, or like
Right.
like even simple thing as like applying for a passport. Like there's no issues with the government per se. Like you can get any normal citizen, regular citizen can get things done. Whereas like in India, it's like you got to pay it. Like
Right,
there's a lot of
bribery
bribery
and stuff,
stuff
yeah,
was
yeah.
an issue, but that's not a race thing. That was just like he's viewing the positives of how society is run.
Right.
Whereas like maybe there's like individuals that may be racist, but those are just individuals. It's not a collective.
I see what you're saying. I think it also has to do with like industry, because your dad was in the science field, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was in the nursing field.
Yeah.
So like she was surrounded by people who were like more educated, I guess you would say.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
you're in friggin' PhD, your dad. So it's like, and then my mom was like a bunch of nurses. So it's like they're like leveled up. But when my dad first came here, he had to start from the bottom.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
and then like him working at the hotel, like watching all of his colleagues get promotions, and like it's because they're white. You know, it's like I know you. Oh, I don't want to talk to you because I don't know you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I
so
get that. Yeah.
Maybe it's that kind of thing. It's like where you came up in the ranking.
Yeah.
or
What you're
whatever.
kind of surrounded by, of
Right,
course.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's always about what you're surrounded by. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like he saw that, and he was always protecting us against that, which I found like really interesting, because like, okay, so to go back to the whole BIPOC thing, right? Like you identify as BIPOC, like naturally, like you look at yourself, but I was confused, right? Because I grew up in like a white school, right, which is like in the middle of suburbia.
Yeah.
Everyone there was white. Like I was the first Filipino with my sister, and then
Right.
other people started to come in, like with Sid. Sid was the first Filipino outside of myself. And it was like, oh, I was crying. It's just interesting because like that perspective of like, okay, I feel like I just gotta, no, she'll settle down. But so like, like in that kind of environment filled with, like, I thought I was them,
Right.
you know, because I wasn't like you, which is so evidently not them, not white, but I was like a touch of Asian,
Yeah.
you know? So like, okay, so go back to it. Like, I didn't really identify as BIPOC. That wasn't even a term back then, but I didn't identify as BIPOC because I have some Spanish in me. So when you look at Brentley, right, he looks Filipino. He's like Chinese Filipino, right?
Sure.
He has like more Asian features.
Yeah.
So I was like with Tara and her sister, and then I was like, do you guys identify as BIPOC? And they're like, not really. And then I was like, they're like, do you? And I was like, now I do. And they're like, I don't know if that applies to you. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, you kind of have a Spanish like touch to you. Like, you don't look fully Asian. You know what I'm saying? And like that was confusing to me, because it's like, where do you fit in?
No, I think, yeah. See,
You know
I
what I'm
think,
saying? Like,
yeah, I feel
so
like
I'm not
that's
you and I'm not you.
Yeah, there were
So-
some things going on, I think, on TikTok where it was like someone that's like white passing, but they're not. Like they may
yeah.
look white, but their experience is not
Yeah,
white.
okay, yes, exactly. Yeah.
So those would be, in my opinion, those would be still considered BIPOC.
Thank you. So this is what I was going to get into. So I really identify with, like, you know, hip hop culture. It was, when I was growing up, it was like all about rock music, because like that's what we all listen to, right? Like white kids, right? Suburban white kids, right? And that's who I surrounded myself with, you know? And then seeing the struggle of the BIPOC people, I was like, oh, I know what you mean. Like having that like racist talk, but you don't really. And then like what you're saying about that TikTok people, it's like you look like this, but you have experiences that are not. So it's like confusing to other people.
Yeah.
Like when I try and say like, oh, I felt that too. It's like, well, how could you have felt that? You know, or like, oh, you don't really know what that means. Like, but it's like we grew up in a time where it was predominantly white, you know?
Yeah.
And you can't, you I don't know, you just don't know where to fit in, is what I'm saying. So it's like, that's an interesting struggle in itself.
Right.
If you're not fully BIPOC like you, but you want to identify as BIPOC, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird.
Yeah, I think it's got to be up to the individual's experience and not necessarily how they look, because then you're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, totally, right? It's like, oh, you can't check that box off. Like, why not?
Yeah, I think that becomes racist right there.
But these are like systemic issues that, like, I feel like even the idea of putting like BIPOC on a thing is kind of weird, because it's like why are you creating more separation? Now I have to tell you that I'm this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But so to go back to, it's like when I was younger, I wouldn't check that box off, because like they're like, oh, that'll derank you. My dad was saying.
Right.
I don't know if it's true, but like maybe it is. And then now I check that off because I know it'll bring me up in the rankings, because it's like
I don't
they
think
want to hire more.
Yeah, I don't know where you would apply that. I guess for like applying for universities, as you said, I think so. Is more like probably they're trying to
Jobs too, though. Now you can leverage BIPOC status.
Sure. I think it's more like the percentage. Is that the quota thing? It's like, okay, we should have this many.
Yeah. And like, it seemed like they were doing that for.
Well, maybe I did pick. Well, I don't remember.
You must have picked that, because like, it would make no sense if you didn't check that off.
Yeah.
Because you get preferential treatment depending on how you say it. You know.
I guess I didn't really think of it like, because it had probably other races too, Caucasian, this. Oh, okay, yeah, I guess I'm not. Like, I didn't think of it like. I didn't think of it like.
Oh, there's no Filipino in mine. That's why I would put other. You write in Filipino.
Oh, okay.
So maybe you saw Indian and you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I wonder which Indian they thought.
I know. I was just thinking that too. It was like, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
But how do you feel about that? Do you think it's like? Do you agree with me on that, like, BIPOC
I
thing?
think if it was more like a statistic thing, I'm fine with it like that.
No, but I mean, like,
if it was
like too much emphasis on BIPOC side, maybe we need it right now, but hopefully in the future we can get rid of it, because it feels like more separation.
I think it depends on where you're using it at and how you're using it.
No, I mean, yeah, for sure. But I mean, like, if we continue to say like, oh, I'm BIPOC, oh, I'm white, it's like, why do you need to separate the two?
Again, I feel like the separation is only there if we have a representation, I guess.
Yeah,
level,
it's like uneven
representation. So that's
but
why
I feel like we're becoming more multicultural. Like, more people are coming.
Yeah.
To
So
Canada
eventually, if we're mixing as races, then that's got to go, right?
Yeah. True. Yeah. Fair. It's also weird to think of it like BIPOC, like Black, Indigenous, person of color. It's like you just lumped in the other people that are not Black. And why'd you put preferential treatment on them too?
Yeah.
You know, it's like you can argue those points.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also yeah. You're saying?
No. It just reminds me of this joke from what's the word? Hunt for the Wilder People. This is like a. I forgot the director's name now. The one that I really like.
Taika Waititi.
Taika Waititi. Yeah. So it was like there was like a joke in there where it's like they're looking for someone in Caucasian, right? The name is Caucasian. So it's like,
that's funny.
And he's like, "You're not Asian.
Oh, that's
You're
funny.
white."
Yeah.
It's like,
that's a weird misnomer. Yeah.
It's like a.
I almost feel like I felt that way too when I was younger, because I didn't understand these like big words like Caucasian. It's like it's a weird word. It's weird how you.
But what is the like the root for that word, right? So it's like, why is it Caucasian? It's like,
yeah, true. Right?
I didn't look into that, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like a scientific reasoning behind it, like why they chose that term. Yeah, it's weird. I
think eventually those things have to go, but I think because it's very relevant today,
that they keep them.
That is, yeah.
You know, it's funny. I was watching the Bruce Lee documentary. I mentioned this before, but
it's like also saying male and female, like when we check off. Like, that's another thing.
All right, so okay, put a pin in that, and we'll come back to that. That's very interesting. So, so I was watching the Bruce Lee doc. I'll finish this thought, and then we'll jump to that female thing, because that's really important. So the Bruce Lee documentary, it's like called like Be Like Water. It turned out to be like more about racism for Asian people. Mm-hmm. And one thing that he said in the documentary is like, Asian people don't complain. We just like, okay, this is the rules of the game. I'm just going to keep moving forward, right? And it's just so sad.
Yeah, it's more like, I think like this is the rules, but we're gonna find ways to
keep going forward.
keep going forward.
Joe Coy mentioned that too. He's like, it became like a weird motivational speech. He's like, today's culture is all about complaining, whereas like Netflix didn't want to buy 8 of his, like he tried 8 times to sell his comedy special to Netflix. So instead of complaining, he paid for it himself and like did it. And like, he's like, that's the determination of like Asian people, right? We should like keep moving forward, right? And okay, so that all being said, is like, we don't complain, but because we don't complain, we also don't get the same emphasis placed on us for like compared to like Black and Indigenous people. You know, like Black Lives Matter. Friggin' all children matter for Indigenous, Orange Sweater Day or whatever.
Right.
You know, but like there's no Asian movement. But we received just as much racism as they did. We just didn't. I'm not saying that's a good thing. Like I'm not saying like, oh,
no. Yeah, I understand that. But by not talking about it, the plea isn't heard.
Totally. And I received that piece as well, because it was like, oh, you didn't receive any like, because when I'm like, oh yeah, I get what the plight of, you know, hip hop artists talking about, like racism, right? It's like, what are you talking about? You didn't experience racism. It's like, no, we just didn't complain about racism.
Yeah.
You know, like we just saw it and we're like, okay, that's who you are.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that in itself kind of pulls us down. I think it's a strength, because it's like, oh, look, this is just how the world is. We're just going to keep moving forward, right? Whereas like, as a drawback to that, they diminish the importance of the racism we felt. Asian people.
Yeah, because it's not heard.
Because it's not heard. Yeah.
So it's like you don't know what's happening.
But for us, it's like, why are you complaining?
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, I get told this like all the time, where it's like, you know, it's way better here than over there. You know, and you're like, oh yeah, you're right. So why are you complaining? It's like, yeah, you might have a little racism, but have you seen the third world country? And you're like, oh, true.
In a way, that's correct. But also, in order to make the first world country better, is also to fix the issues that are there, right?
For sure. Or are we playing the long game, because who's buying up all the condos? Asian people. They're like, okay, yeah, you be racist for now, but we're gonna win.
Yeah, they could. That's possible. But I don't think there's like a meeting happening.
No, not a meeting. No. Definitely not a meeting. But it's almost like we grind in silence.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's more about like figuring out how to be successful even with our whatever the situation is. So it doesn't really matter if we end up becoming like financially successful and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, if you actually even look at it historically, like China was a world power for a super long time, like a dynasty.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm sure they know how to play the game. How long has Canada been around? 150 years? That's nothing compared to the thousands of years. They're just like, oh, that's interesting. Like, we'll dominate it through economics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, did you know that the front, the whole the whole waterfront of Toronto, most of it is owned by Asian people from, I think, Hong Kong. There's a guy that just bought up a bunch of those buildings and he's like financing them. So it's like, you know, we're letting you live here kind of thing, you know? You're still paying us in some way. Yeah. I found that interesting. I don't know if we'll have time to get into the other aspects. You know, I'll just highlight it quickly. When I went back into my notes, because I just wanted to like circle back on this Indigenous thing, the doctrine of discovery is the name for when the Pope, it's like, that's the thing that the Pope created to say that Europeans are entitled to land occupied by non-Christians. So if a non-Christian is on the land, the European can kick them off legally from God.
Right.
And he called it the doctrine of discovery.
Yeah, so that was the thing, right? So they had to find a way to justify what they were doing.
Right?
And they had to justify it through their means of their religion.
Yeah.
To understand, it's God's who's saying
it's higher than us.
It's higher than us. Do it. We have to do it.
Right? Like God said, bro.
That's
God
the
said.
excuse.
But, you know, if you look at the history of the Catholic Church, aside from like the Dark Ages, where they went around killing all scientists and stuff, right? Like that's what the Dark Ages
they were secluded inside of Europe versus exploring out.
Yeah. if you look at like that, or like even the rampant pedophilia within the Christian church or Catholic church, it's like you're making immoral choices, but giving them moral choices because it was decreed upon by God.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Because how come we didn't try those priests for crimes? Because they're protected by the Pope? These are actual questions. Like, I don't understand why.
I mean, I don't know what's happened with all that. That's what the movie Spotlight is about.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, no, that was one priest, though.
Yeah, I know. But that was like the big thing when the first, all of it's coming out. Like, there was so many that they were...
True.
That they had hid. Sorry. So...
It's almost like an Epstein Island kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, this whole...
Yeah,
Christian
there was...
thing.
Yeah. That's why, like, it's never happened before where there's kind of like... There's two popes. Normally, it's the pope dies and
but
he had to...
He was like, this is messed up. I can't do this. And he, like, left.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. There's a good movie on Netflix. You should watch that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Oh, the transition
Two
of
popes.
popes. Yeah. That is what happened, right? That's what we heard, but I don't know if it was actually true.
Yeah, that was like...
He saw the actual sexual allegations, like, oh, dude, this is a lot.
Yeah, it's like I don't remember exactly. I saw the movie, but I don't remember, but it was a good movie.
Okay, yeah, I'll check it out. Yeah, so then from that, like, you can charge Catholic/Christians with indigenous schools, residential schools as well. So, like, there's so much in their history, right? But you can't say that about, like Muslims, even though they're the people of the book.
You can't say that now.
You can't say about Jews either. It's more Christians that...
Yeah, but because we're in that history right now. So yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Right.
But if you look back in history, there are moments of
yeah.
I mean, like, colonization
But
is
this
just a part of who we are.
This is part of it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like it's an ebb and flow, and now we're in a different world. That we are, or they are recognizing the horrors that they had done, and
trying to undo it.
Trying to undo it and find ways to fix those issues.
I'm gonna unpin that thing because I totally forgot about that when you said different world, the male-female thing. So I was rewatching that guy. Who's that? The Change My Mind guy.
Change My Mind guy.
You know, he has like a table. He has a topic.
Oh yeah. Okay, Crowder,
thank you. Stephen Crowder.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I was watching his like thing where it's just funny because so Stephen Crowder, Firas Zahabi, they all argue against the gender thing, right? And I was for them before I got schooled in it, right? I did the GBA Plus training, right? The gender-based analysis plus, that's what it's called. And I was kind of like going into it like, oh, I know what this is going to be about, but like they probably didn't think about sex and gender being two different things, right? So Stephen Crowder's like, there's only two genders, changing my mind. And then the girl was like, no, there's infinite amount of genders. And then Firas Zahabi was also saying like two genders too, but then there's a difference between, and he put it well, Firas Zahabi, there's a difference between gender, which is psychological, and sex, which is biological.
Yeah.
But nobody brought that up in the argument. So when he's like, there's only two genders, changing my mind, and she said there's infinite, I'm like, you guys just have a communication issue.
No, I know, but also you have to, no, I get that.
He's trolling.
No, but also he's only going to put up videos that are good on his side, right?
No, totally. Yeah, I agree.
I just wanted to say that.
For sure. Yeah. He's
so like maybe he had somebody that did say that, but he's not.
Oh, I see.
He's not going to show that.
Because if I saw that sign, I'd be like, simple argument. Like, you're right.
Yeah.
No, you're wrong. There are not two genders because gender is psychological, sex is biological.
Yeah.
You killed the argument.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
And remember, even my sister was like, "What are you going to do about that?" Like, because there's only two, and in the hospital. And after doing the GBA Plus training, I'm like, "No, they literally said that."
I remember telling you this, but maybe you forgot. Like, that there was gender is this and this is this.
No, we knew that, but I didn't know it was official.
Like, okay. It was okay.
No,
yeah.
But what I'm saying is like this was government training.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, you're teaching people this.
Yeah.
So it's like we just didn't get educated in that because we both knew that there was a difference, and we're like, I remember when I'm pretty sure we did a podcast on this where it was like gender and sex.
Yeah.
And then there is like you can only have two sexes because you're either male or female within your sex. Like, what organ are you born with?
Yeah.
But you can have an infinite.
It's not like not necessarily one organ because it's your chromosomes. What chromosomes?
Oh, whatever. Yeah. That's the science. The science.
Yeah,
There's only
the
two,
science.
right? But like, if we're talking about psychology, it's like, yeah, you can be whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
So when she said there's infinite genders, it's like, yeah, you can be a fox, you can be a Super Saiyan, you can be a whatever, because it's like we're arguing intangibles. Like, sex is tangible. You can see it, you can touch it. You're like, this is what it is. I need this for science.
Yeah.
You know, but gender, whatever. So when they talk about things like gender fluidity, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, you don't really settle within one camp.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And then there's different levels to what that kind of means. Like, where it's like, if I use like masculinity and femininity, right? It's like, that's.
Oh, you know what I do?
That also changes even daily.
for sure. But you know what I do for that one now? Because I receive a lot of pushback on it. So there's like masculine energy, feminine energy, right? Yeah. These are just like states of nature. They're just definitions, right?
Yeah.
So what I go is yin or yang.
Right.
Because then people like, yin is feminine, yang is masculine. Right. If you actually look at what it means. But I'm just using the word that they think is esoteric so that they can be like, oh yeah, there is, yeah.
That's why it has
masculine.
Yeah,
energy.
that's why in that thing
there's a piece of both.
There's a piece of both, right?
Yeah.
And
then connected. It's all one.
Yeah.
It's like, that's why I like Taoism again. It's more of just the flow of nature. Right?
Yeah, I mean, these are things that have been through society. It's not like something new.
Well, this is a specifically Chinese society, so it's like they've been doing it for a long time, you know?
No, I know. I think it's in a lot of, like, these things have been in a lot of old ancient
but for sure,
stuff.
In ancient things.
Yes.
But how old is Canada? 150 years.
No, I know.
So like,
we're coming at it from the colonizers' perspective who had this religious spread.
But if you add in, like, spiritual understanding, it's like, no, this has been here before.
So that's what's happening. It's more like things are... The other way, it's fighting back the other way.
Yeah,
where it's like coming back where there's not just the simplicity of, like...
Right.
You know, society is colorful of different things. It's not just black and white.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas, like, this goes back to colonial systemic nature. It's like, it's so black and white.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? I guess in evolution or whatever, it's like nothing is stagnant. Everything keeps... But that's changing and moving.
That's a thousands and thousands of year old perspective where it's like we work in harmony with nature. Whereas like the colonial aspect is like we dominate nature.
Yeah.
But that all stems from the Bible though. In Christian Bible, it's like this was made for you. We own dominion over.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Like God literally created us to have the best life with everything around us as at our disposal.
Yeah.
But that's only one religion. But if you look at like indigenous cultures and like Hinduism, you know, it's like Taoism, it's like we are one piece in this grand thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Really fascinating. So yeah, infinite genders. Okay, so another thing is the 1947 liquidation plan. So this was interesting. In 1947, they made a plan to remove all indigenous treaties. It didn't pass through, but like they were trying to like assimilate them. They really wanted them gone, you know?
Okay.
And then in 1969, there was a thing called the White Paper Policy, where they tried to remove Indian status, so you couldn't even be Indian anymore. So that was interesting as well, because they wanted like Canadian. They don't want Indigenous in Canada. Like everyone in Canada, even if you're Indigenous, is Canadian. That's what they wanted. They don't want this like separation.
Okay.
Yeah, just more eradication of a race. And then the UN Declaration of Rights for Indigenous People, it was in 2007 when the UN was like, globally we need to acknowledge that indigenous people are human, right? Because of the doctrine of the Pope.
Yeah, right.
So right. So they tried to go back and be like, actually, the Pope was wrong. Indigenous people are people.
Yeah.
They're not human.
Right. I mean, this should have been amended a long time ago.
Right. It took 2007. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So in 2007, only 7 countries said no, and Canada was one of them, which is really fascinating. It's like you didn't want to give up. You didn't want to allow them rights.
Right.
You know, because like in New Zealand, right, the Maori people, yeah, they integrated their culture with the New Zealand people. That's why you have the hakas as a national thing. I guess our version of the haka is the land acknowledgement now. Canadians do like a land acknowledgement. Yeah, so that's fascinating. And then in 2016, they revisited the vote, and then they finally said, like, yes, we'll acknowledge them as human beings.
Right.
But isn't that crazy? It's like, what took you so long?
Yeah, that's what took you so long. I wonder how much it is to do with like the kind of government that you have, right?
But then what does that say about the government at the time? Like racism.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Well, that's the like if I go into a bit more politics, it's like that's always the attack between the liberals and conservatives, right?
Yeah.
Which was one is pro-white, I guess, right? And then other one
exactly.
is, other one's more liberal in accepting. So it's like he was mentioning the TV interview where it was Trudeau's dad that brought up this thing of why don't we try to scrap or get rid of the Indian Act or fix this thing.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
That's what they were kind of saying.
Oh, we didn't finish the...
Yeah, right. And then it's like, at least that's what I think I understood it as. And it just couldn't be done at the time, I guess. But it was like, that was brought up when he was a liberal person, right? That was in... Right.
I
don't know what year, but then you said like that, was it Harper time when that happened?
When they said no.
Yeah, when they said no, or was that during... I think so, but yeah. So it's like what kind of... The sway of the government is like how far can you can they push through for their policies, the indigenous policies, and like how much pullback do you get from the other kind of government?
Right.
So it's always about the change in government is always what's going to be how fast or slow is things moving.
But isn't that weird as an indicator that it's like even a child would know that it's right and wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you went to a child and you're like, oh, we're gonna treat them differently because of the color of their skin or their status on paper, the child would be like, what?
Yeah, so that's
like it's
I get that. I get what you're saying.
Like weird injustice.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but no, this is.
But why? So then now the question becomes, if we can all understand that that's just unjust. Like I just did one training and I found out all about all this, and now I'm like a huge advocate for it simply because I'm like, that is just messed up. Because that innately you know that that's wrong. You know.
Yeah.
But history is told by the winner. That's the thing, right? Like you have to play with the rules of the winner.
Yeah.
Weird, right? So then it got me thinking about what the game, because the game said this too, and it was like, well, he didn't say it, but like he brought up, he's been studying a lot. There's like the Federal Housing Act in the U.S. where they wouldn't allow black people to own specific properties, and you couldn't even sell it to, like, your kids can't sell to black people when you're looking to sell your home. Like, it's weird that literally laws are written to keep other people down. The Indian Act, the Federal Housing Act, the rejecting of the United Nation Indigenous People Right thing, right? So it's like, it's weird that in our world of quote unquote positivity, I guess, or like nice, like a fairness. I don't know, like on the surface you look like it's fair.
Sure. But
then underneath it's like, it's really not fair. It's really racist and biased.
Yeah, but I understand that, and I think that a lot of that stuff is just we're looking at today's lens. I think in that time it's like
no, because they won and they wanted to keep winning.
No, I know, but I think it depends. Like at that time, they individually thought that they had a better society. Let's say the ones who.
Okay, totally, I agree with you.
Right.
But how many other people thought that too? Hitler, Stalin.
No, I understand that.
Supremacy.
Sure. But where are we now, right? Like.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
It's the same, within the same society, we have
You know why, though? because of immigration.
Yeah, but who
So-
started the immigration? Like, who allowed the immigration to
Right,
come
and
in?
that's why
Right.
you have people who are older in like these small towns that are like, oh, like look at these immigrants. Like how
Sure.
much anti-immigration, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Even
yeah.
in Canada, they hate immigration, so they're gonna come and take our jobs. In U.S. too, right? Like, oh, you're gonna let the Mexicans in, they're gonna take our jobs.
Depends on how you ask it. Are they for legal immigration? They are. Most cases.
Okay.
Are they for illegal
No,
immigration?
But so this is the going back to my dad's story about like the racism he felt. That's what he was experiencing. People were like, "Oh, your kind is coming in and they're taking our jobs."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then like go back to where you came from. That's kind of the stuff he was hearing.
I get
That's
that.
why he got into fights.
Yeah, I
right?
get that, but that's coming in. The ones who are passing the laws to bring in the, let's say, bring in more immigrants and stuff. Those are also the white people that are
Right.
well-educated white people, let's just say, or
Right.
politically educated.
So it's based on your level of education.
Hmm. Yeah, and how much exactly, and what kind of fear is being spread based on.
Totally, exactly. And what does this all come back to? Education.
Yeah.
Like, why did I suddenly become a huge advocate for
Right.
these rights? Because
Right.
I took that program. I was like, oh, this is what's going on?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, we just don't. And I was like, we need to market this better, people. We need to know about this.
Yeah. That's the thing. Yeah, it's always about the education. When there's a lack of education, there's a lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And
true.
I think with education comes more clarity.
Because like, imagine being like, okay, if you're ignorant to something, if you're willfully ignorant, that's just you choosing. Well, like willful ignorance is almost the biggest sin I see it as, willful ignorance. Because it's like you see what the thing is and you're choosing not to believe it because you don't want to believe it.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas like ignorance that can be stomped out with education, that's something you could work with.
Yeah.
It's the people that are just refusing to change in the face of education.
Mhm.
It's like if everyone knew that Canada started with Indigenous French and British, and then the French and British worked together to kick out the Indigenous, and then the British worked more to kick out the French.
Mhm.
That's why Montreal and Quebec are the only place, or Quebec is the only place that is
Right.
predominantly French speaking.
Yeah.
You know, if you learn about history, then how can you not
So
change your worldview?
right. So I feel like with the education, if you don't change with the education, that just means you're racist.
Willful ignorance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to say. It's like the biggest sin is willful ignorance.
Yeah, I think that most people are not educated on these things.
Okay, maybe.
Yeah, I most people, especially now with what's going on with a lot of misinformation that spreads on the internet.
Yeah. Misinformation is the other thing. It's you're educated but miseducated. So what change? So actually, that brings up a good point. I'll let you finish that thought and then I'll.
No, so like that's what I'm thinking. That a lot of them are just being manipulated or misinformed of the actual scenario,
Right.
and then becoming or seems like they're more racist in that sense. But they're just misinformed of all the whole total information.
Right. Which is a sin on like the media's part, but because that's like brainwashing propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that brings up what Tara saw yesterday and the thing she sent with like the White Lives Matter, right?
Yeah.
One, it's weird that it was in Canada. It's like, oh, that's odd. They were holding up that White Lives Matter sign with like the URL at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then they were also hiding their faces. So I was like, you don't even have the courage to show your face. They were like using the masks, right?
Yeah,
but it's like,
yeah.
oh, it's COVID, I can wear this mask. But it's like, show me your face, bro. You know
Right.
why? Because if you had a photo of yourself at the White Lives Matter thing, it goes viral, you're getting fired from your job,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, really think about that.
Yeah,
That's why they were doing it.
Right.
So, like, you can't even keep it 100.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why I like the game, right? It's just be like the game, the rapper. It's like all he advocates in his raps is just be true, be honest. You know, have the courage to be honest.
Right.
So if you really believe in this White Lives Matter thing, show me your face.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I will show my face for like an Indigenous rights thing because I believe in it.
Yeah.
If you believe in something, rep it to the fullest,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
But you're hiding your face, so I don't know. You're either a coward or you don't really believe in this
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
So then I go to the URL because I was like curious. I was like really praying, please don't be a virus. That would suck. Like if it's a troll, like they're doing it on purpose to make a virus. Like you download a virus.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah. Right.
Because it's like so much exposure. People are like, what does that URL say?
Yeah,
So I go to the URL. It's a private Telegram page with 609 members for White Lives Matter protests in Canada. And I was like, what? You have 609 people that actually believe in white lives. Like, I get it. All lives matter. White lives matter.
Sure.
Totally. But it's like, realize through history and education that it has been swayed in one direction, and now the other side is trying to lift themselves up. That's how I see it.
Yeah. I agree. I understand what you're saying, and I think that makes total sense. But
does it go back to the miseducation thing?
It's miseducation.
Yeah.
Because when they see posts saying that Black Lives Matter, maybe the misinformation that's happening there is that all they're talking about is only Black lives.
No, totally. No, but even if
they're not understanding that what they're saying is this is currently happening to this community.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not. If you talk to them I feel like if you talk to them individually and break it down, you would have to. I think a sane person would understand that.
Unless they have willful ignorance.
No, that's what I'm saying. No, I'm saying like you talk to them and give them actual information versus giving them misinformation, right?
But you know what's really hard too?
So what I wanted to bring it back to is like, but also what's happening is for people that are even like someone that says he's a White Lives Matter, let's say, and you don't talk to them, then you're allowing them to continue to being stuck in that.
Yeah, facts.
Right?
Yeah.
So what's also happening is if you want to discuss or talk to people, or like the people don't want to talk to people that are different view than you.
Yeah.
Then you're just creating more separation. You should be able to allow them to bring them in for a discussion.
For sure.
So that's how you inform them and change their mind over time.
So the problem with that is compounding interest of ideas. So if they are thinking in that one way and then they just keep reinforcing that, it is like interest.
No, I understand that. I understand that.
Stronger and stronger.
Yes. That's what they try to say. But you're never it's not going to, then all you're doing is you're creating a bigger echo chamber away when you don't talk to them.
Yeah, for sure. So the second point to that is it depends on how you talk to them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So,
of course.
Remember I was saying before, like, that interview question where they're like, if you experience a bit of racism from someone around you, or like a closed-minded anti-BIPOC, anti-2S LGBT plus point of view, what do you do? And like I knew they're looking for, I would champion this change, I would advocate this, blah blah blah. And then I said like what I would really do, which is ask them why they think that, but not from the place of changing their mind.
Yeah. Okay.
From understanding. Yeah. So you can feel the difference, right? Yeah. So when I remember I told like...
So there are ways when you debate, or I don't want to say argue, when you talk to somebody, like you have to come at them without not like hate towards them in a way.
No, it's not even that. Wait.
I forgot that.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. No, there's an even deeper layer that I go to, which is... so there's the one where it's like, I've heard many people say this, I would ask them, but when they say that they would ask them, it's like, you just want to change my mind when you ask me, right? And then what was the one you were saying? You ask them without hate.
Yeah.
Right? Totally.
Right.
Yeah, there's that one. So there's the asking where you ask them, but you want to change their mind. That's not going to work. There's the asking without any hate, which is one layer up. But the one that I think is best is you ask them with the intention that I might be wrong.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Right. It's not. It doesn't even have to do with emotion.
Sure.
It's like you actually might be correct. I don't know. Tell me why I'm wrong. But not from tell me why I'm wrong.
No.
It's more like,
yeah.
It's like,
you don't come at them with you don't come at them. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you don't come at them as if you have
the answer.
Yeah, you have the answer.
It's like I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
Like is Allah my savior? I really don't know. Maybe there is. Like, is there something? Like, if you can actually prove to me, I'm like, oh, I will convert. If you can actually tell me why, because I'm very curious. Like, if you come at it from a place of genuine curiosity, I think that's when people can feel that.
I think that will be more of a fruitful discussion.
Yeah, because then you're like, I actually don't know. And if you're right, you're right. I really want to know. Like, why do you think white lives matter? And then it's like, but then they'll come at you like, oh, these immigrants are taking your jobs. Yeah, you're right. They are coming and taking jobs. But like, you guys were technically here first. So is it like your fear of?
No, but it's also like what do you mean by they're taking your job? So do you like for instance, like in the U.S., like a lot of the landscaping jobs are taken by Mexicans.
Oh, you want to do that job?
Yeah. Is that something that you've always done, or is that something that you? But not.
No. I get what you're saying, but that's how you do it, right? It's like, oh, they're gonna take our landscaping jobs. Like, oh shoot, I didn't know you want a landscaping job. No, I want to work in an office. Oh, okay.
But most of them are not taking those jobs.
But yeah, exactly. They're actually just taking the lower. So is that why you don't like them?
Yeah.
And like, no, I don't like them because of their face. You know, like they can't. How do you answer that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, really think about it.
Right.
If you ask them a legit question, like, I don't know why you're mad. Doesn't that make sense? And
it does.
Then they realize themselves like, why am I mad?
Yeah.
Like, that's a job I
so
don't know.
That's why I like watching all types of discussions that happen, and that in a discussion that has different types of people. If it's always with the same, everybody's thinking the same thing, then it's just you're just building the same echo chamber.
For sure. You know where I noticed that too. You can actually apply that same train of thought to everything you do.
Mm-hmm.
So right now there's during the pandemic, people were like advocating nurses getting more money, and then now they're like, but before that, it was like, oh, why are you paying nurses so much, right? And then there's always that constant argument of like, why do you have to pay them? Why do you have to pay them? And rather than joining a side of the argument, it's like, I asked myself, do I want, like, if you're going to pay me more, sure, I'll take that job, but do you really want that job?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to give people injections, right? You know, you have to like make them feel better as they're dying, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're going to hold your hand and ask you to save their life as their candles being blown out. Do you want that job? Go get that job then.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't want that job, quit complaining about that job. Like, my sister makes way more than me, but you get really pissed if you're like, oh, that's like a status thing, right? Oh, I should be making as much as you. It's like, go do that job.
Right.
But I willfully know, because I ask curiously, like, what do you do? So I say, like, what do you do all day? And she describes it to me. I'm like, yeah, I don't want that job.
Right.
So it's like, okay, then why can't we have peace? Like, because then people are like, why are you paying them more? Do you know what they do?
True. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. No, that's the thing, right? Nobody actually knows what.
But that's curiosity.
Yeah, you have to.
Education.
Yeah.
Education only comes through curiosity. You have to be curious about it, rather than be like, why do you pay them more? But then that's coming from an aggressive point of view,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I don't want to pay you more, but why are you paying them more? But if you come at it with curiosity, like, why are you paying them more? I actually don't know. It's like, oh, because they do X, Y, and Z. You're like, ooh, no.
Right.
Like, oh, wait, you have to put
It's more like, it's also like they're doing all these things, but you want to get a better care of treatment, and that all comes with.
Yeah, do you know how much it costs for PPE, bro? Like, when they were running out of PPE, like, how much does it cost economically? Like,
I mean, they're in the front lines. They were putting their lives in the front lines during the beginning of this pandemic when we didn't even have vaccines. So
right,
it's like,
right, and
they are going to be any kind of scenario like these that happen. They're the ones in the front lines. They're the ones.
Do you want to do that? Do you know that if there was a nuclear, like, if you watch the Chernobyl documentary, those nurses are going to be there to help those people that have radiation poisoning, and those nurses might get radiation poisoning from them.
Exactly.
Do you want to go do that? I don't want to do that. Go pay them more. You know, it's sort of like, I think we had this discussion before about, like, who's going to clean the septic tank? Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
Pay them more money because nobody wants to do it. You have to pay a lot of money to go do a job that nobody wants to do.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So if you look at it curiously, it's like, yeah, I understand why. It's just the ignorance.
Yeah.
The lack of education. Yeah. Anything else about that? I feel like I'll wrap up with actually I have one other thing here as well I want to talk about. Religious exemptions. It almost feels like in the future that, like, you know, like, okay, so it's like don't have tobacco Like, you know, if there's like a policy, it's like you cannot have tobacco, but then you have a religious exemption because you're like indigenous, and tobacco for them is super sacred. Right. So you're like, okay, we'll let you have your tobacco. And right now we're giving that for indigenous people, but like, it's like, oh, you can't smoke weed here, or smoke marijuana, or ganja, right? I'm trying to use their term. And then they're like, oh, I'm Rastafarian, so you have to let it go. So it's almost like, in the face of culture and religious exemptions or whatever, if we're really going to go so far as identifying as any gender, it's almost like you should also do away with all legality surrounding spiritual drugs, let's say. You know?
Yeah.
Because that almost seems like a systemic colonial thing as well. Right?
Sure.
Why'd you make ganja illegal? That's a religious thing. Why'd you make tobacco illegal? That's a religious thing. Why'd you make mushrooms illegal? That's a shaman thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I feel like, just like the BIPOC thing that we talked about before, that might just fade over time.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think the religious / colonial thing about the drugs, that makes sense. Yeah. Right.
And that all started, legalities is like, came down to commerce. You know, because all this stuff was legal before. You know, acid, mushrooms.
We made these rules up, right? We made the rules up, making it illegal. They were already here.
Yeah, actually, if you even look at, this is why I got over my. I mean,
like,
thing.
There's a lot of, like, we don't realize, like, the amount of influence. Like, we think, like, even though, like, India has like the religion, like a ancient religion kind of thing and stuff, but there's been a lot of influence even on that religion from the past.
Totally.
Of how certain things are done. It could be from the other colonizers that came into India that left their imprints, and then whatever the recent colonizer left in their imprints, right?
Yeah.
So
totally.
I would say that even within Hinduism there has been changes that I don't think we'll ever get back what the original was.
So I think maybe it's like you can't stop change, because you can't. Like, when we talk about systemic colonialism, systemic racism, that actually happened throughout everything in history. It's not just our time.
No,
you were saying, like, imprints of different cultures, like,
course,
they come and go.
Yeah.
You'll never get the original back.
Yeah, it's like like the video that I was watching where it's like we didn't wear as many clothes, or maybe like certain tribes in the South didn't wear as much, like didn't cover as much. They had like certain things, and then you can see like when like the Muslim religion came in, like the style of clothing started to change, right? And then when the British came in, so there's like multiple times over and over, like there are different things, right? So like how much influence things are coming in or imprinting, and we think that's part of the old culture, right? Like, so the way that they wear sari is not the same as what they used to wear a long time ago.
Totally.
So it's like we forget that all these imprints have happened, but that was based on other things that happened in the past, that we're right now in this current dealing with the latest colonizers imprints.
Exactly. Yeah. But now we're like collecting as a voice.
Yeah.
You know,
I think these are the positives of the internet, I feel like.
Yeah, totally. Because before it would have happened, you would have not known about it. It would just happen in silence. Yeah. Actually, that reminds me of what you said about the person your mom walks with, the Patel thing. Just go into that.
Yeah, I don't want to. That's what they were saying, but I don't want to go into like that too much, because it's like I don't want to. It's a hearsay thing.
It's hearsay. Yeah,
I don't want to go specific.
But that lady has like, I'm always fascinated by her when I see her.
So it's like there's like there's even tribes people within India that I don't think most people even know, because most people would have been now influenced by the British or influenced in thinking from like the recent colonizers, right? So it's like you don't think that there were actual like tribes. Like India was tribal.
Because she has all the tribal tattoos. I'm like, that's so sick.
And there's cultures that have that, and I've seen videos that talk about that kind of thing. And but it's like it isn't too much known about it, and I think that should be. I feel like that's an interesting thing to know more about. This is even more like ancient historical stuff that isn't really even in the mainstream.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Right.
But now you can Google it.
Yeah.
Like YouTube
exactly.
videos. That's the miracle of the internet.
Yeah.
That we can find out all this information. Yeah, that's why, again, willful ignorance is like, it's the biggest sin, because like you just Google it, man.
Yeah.
And then and not even just Google your side, Google both sides, and then you make your judgment. So you can look at both perspectives. Like Steven Crowder, right? I was like, oh, I agree with you, and I did the training. Oh, I actually disagree with you now, because it's like, because education is always evolving.
Yeah.
You're not like, my opinion now is not going to be my opinion forever, and if it is, that's willful ignorance.
Yeah.
That's like again the biggest sin.
Yeah.
You need to keep changing your worldview as the world gets bigger and bigger, or smaller and smaller because of the internet. Yeah. Okay.
As your knowledge gets bigger and bigger and the world gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'll skip this. You should watch The Girlfriend Who Didn't Exist. I'm watching it right now. We won't get into it, but it's really interesting. It's like catfishing. It's a crazy catfish.
Okay.
I'll give you the premise. It'll hype everyone up to go watch it. So basically what's happening is in this documentary, the guy, the person, I don't even know how to say it, the person, because they transitioned and I don't know what their pronouns are.
Okay.
Like, I don't know what they want to
currently go by.
Yeah, because it is even a disclaimer in the beginning.
Okay.
So this person created a fake Facebook profile and then started to talk to this really like high rising star in football.
Okay.
Like NFL.
Yeah.
And then in order to, so we didn't even hear about this. This is actually pretty recent too, but it's American news. So he was a high rising football star. He fell in love with this person over Facebook. And it was like 2009, I think. And then the person who was faking it, like he kept wanting to meet up. And the person who was faking it was like, oh, I can't meet up. So that person killed themselves, like died in a car crash.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, they were battling leukemia.
Okay.
I think they had a car crash and then it became like super convoluted. Like it turned out they had leukemia and then...
Right, they were trying to live a different life online.
Yeah, but then they wanted to end. It's a she now. They are a she now.
Oh, okay.
But before it was a he.
Okay.
And then so basically this kind of highlights like the problem with not accepting people. So it was a man who wanted to be a female. So there wasn't treatments back then, so they would exercise their female component through Facebook.
Okay.
And then they fell in love, whatever.
Right. Okay.
And then so it gets really messed up because they're like in the hospital chair, they're calling, and then like, oh, I'm the brother, but it's actually the guy. Oh, I'm the brother. She's in the hospital. Here, I'm just gonna put the phone down. And then the guy's like talking to her, like, can you hear me? And then this is so messed up. The guy goes, Mateo, as if she called to him from her coma. So he was like, oh my God, I'm keeping her alive. So he called her every single day and had like these chats just to make her
okay.
Like,
wow. Okay.
That's deep, right?
Yeah.
That's like a deep lie, bro. And then like, so she finally recovered and like, oh, it was only your phone calls every day that brought her out of this coma. So he was like, oh my God, I'm like saving this girl's life, whatever. And then he started to get more and more famous. She got pissed, like he got pissed. And then to spite them, he's like, oh, they died in a car crash. So it was first leukemia, recovered. Or no, car crash, leukemia? So something like that. Yeah. Oh, no, they're still recovering, and then leukemia took over, and they died.
Okay.
I forget the exact intricacies.
Sure.
But then he was like, I'm going to dedicate this final year of football to the girl who died. And then the whole country took that up by storm. They're like, oh my God, this story of this guy who's doing it for his dead girlfriend and dead grandma, because the grandma died on the same day as the girlfriend. But the fake person didn't know that. It was just bad timing. So all of America was like cheering him on and like all this stuff. And then it turned out it was fake. And then they made a documentary about it. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like Netflix will find the craziest stuff that you thought.
Yeah, there was another one. Yeah. I forgot what the one Something
crazy will happen. You're like, I can't wait for the Netflix documentary for this one. You know what I mean? because the whole country was like he would like go out on the field. I'm doing this for
and football's huge over there, right?
And football's huge, so they're like, what an icon! He's doing it for his dead girlfriend. And then when they found out, oh man, they like were pissed.
Yeah.
But could you imagine? Wow, like that's so intense. But yeah, 2009.
Interesting.
Yeah, sorry, you're gonna say something about?
No, what was it? What's it called?
The girlfriend who didn't exist. Yeah. Can you believe that? Like, you literally based your whole rise on a fake story,
Mm-hmm.
and you had all of America fooled.
Hey, that's to think of that intricately, though.
Yeah, dude. It opens with like that person's working at like a retail store now. Like their life is done.
Yeah, but he had his glory moments.
The transition person?
Yeah.
Well, no, not really glory. Like they were saying that they can't put their name on the resume because everyone in America knows this person. Like it's born in Canada, so I guess we didn't hear about it.
I guess, yeah.
It was also 2009, so we were kind of young.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Crazy, right? Yeah. You never know, man, with the media. Okay, so any final thoughts on that one, or
no?
you
Like,
were thinking of something?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff happening at that time. I think even
The housing crisis, 2008.
no, yeah, but it was like another like Netflix doc. I forgot what year that one was too. That,
Oh, really? Okay, that they made around that time.
Yeah, there was really no rules of the internet, right?
Yeah.
Like,
they didn't know what catfishing was.
Yeah, they didn't know what that was.
Like,
they didn't know like.
Because in the documentary,
like Facebook was too like very new, right?
Very new,
so
yeah.
like you're putting your personal things on there, not realizing what the internet does is that once you put personal things up there, it's forever.
Yeah, exactly. Because they asked him that. They're like, "Didn't you know what catfishing was?" And he's like, "It was 2009. Nobody knew what that was.
Yeah, no.
Like it wasn't a thing."
Yeah.
Crazy. I just think it's.
They made it like a show, right? Catfish, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a documentary first, and then
right. Yeah,
then they made a show. But I'm more surprised that it actually permeated all of America. Like watching the footage of like the newsreels and all that, like everyone was wearing had these signs and they were rooting for him because like your dead girlfriend. It's a perfect story.
That's what I'm saying. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so intense. Okay, so finally into the Joe thing. That was a weird one. That was a weird stand-up.
Okay,
so
why?
He was just riffing off the crowd, and I was like, this is kind of weird. And then he goes, I'm just going to tell you all what I'm doing. So mind you, this is a sold-out 12,000 person event.
Okay.
You expect a stand-up routine.
Yeah.
And it felt like he was not doing, there was no through line. So I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like he was just talking to the audience and like giving stories and like whatever. And then he goes, I'm going to tell you all what I'm doing. I just shot my LA special. And they're like, yeah, wow, And he's like, oh, I also filmed this movie. He was like playing his trailer throughout the thing. It felt like a promo for the friggin' movie. And then he was like, when you film, as a comedian, once you film an hour, you kill all of your material. Right. And he's like, if I were to do that stand up for you today, you'd watch the Netflix special and be like, what the hell? I could have watched it for free.
Just watched it. Yeah. So
he said, what I'm doing is called writing. So all he was doing was just freestyling the entire show. Me and my sister were like, bro, we paid for this.
Right.
There was no act. So it went from like riffing off the crowd to him being like, guys, it's so hot. Somebody go buy me a beer. So then people from the crowd were just buying him beers and shots. So he was just doing beers and shots with people in the crowd. And then it went into like a motivational talk where he was talking about like what he went through and like the racism of like Filipino people. And then it went to...
He grew up in America, right?
He grew up in America. Yeah. And then it went to, a pitch for his movie. And then it ended off with karaoke. It was so weird. It was like, are we just hanging out with this guy?
That's what it seems like.
12,000 sold out show, and we just hung out with this guy. But he went overtime. He's like, I'm not leaving stage. And I'm like, it kind of felt like, because It was weird. It was weird. We were all like, I don't get where you're going with this. He was just talking to us all and talking to the crowd. And then he's like riffing off this guy, and he's like, do you know any Indian songs? To this one guy. And he's like, is that your Filipino wife? She's like, yeah. He's like, come up here and sing her a song. I swear, dude. It was like, what? And then the guy was like, yeah, I'll come up. So then he's like, wait, before you do, you have to look in this camera and say, I accept this or whatever. Like, I acknowledge that I'm okay with this. So he said it. He's like, yo, you're screwed now, bro, because I'm going to make money off this. So he was just pulling content for himself. And then the guy started to sing an Indian song, and we were all like clapping along to him. So it was weird, dude. It was so weird. And then his DJ came on stage, and then his DJ was like, he was talking about how, like, oh man, 90s music was the best. Play me a 90s song. He played the 90s song, and everyone knew the song. They were famous songs. I didn't really know them, but then the crowd started singing, and then he's like, no way. So he realized that the crowd knew the songs, so he kept playing different songs, and he would sing to them like it was a concert. Us. He sang
I know.
It was like a karaoke session. He's like, he put on like Boys to Men, and he started singing Boys to Men. And we were like, what? And then he'd hold the mic out and the crowd would sing it. It would literally turn into like a giant karaoke concert. And then he ended it off with like a very famous song. And then he was singing it like as if he was the singer. He has a good voice. And then he's like, everyone, put your lighters in the air, or put your phone on, pull your phone out, put like the flash on. So we all did it, and I was doing it too. We were like waving, and it was sick. But it was like, it ended like a concert. We were all like waving our lights in the air. And then he was singing the song. And then he's like, I love you, Toronto. And then that's how it ended, bro. I was like, I feel like he couldn't get any better than this. Like, they shut off all the lights, and all the the phones were out. I was like, yo, Sunshine, you gotta film this. It looks so sick. But she didn't capture it because she did her phone thing too. It was sick. It was like that part was sick, but it was weird. You know what I mean? It was like sick but weird. So like, it was almost like you're living out your dream to be a musician. And then he also danced for us. He's like, put on some music, and he started dancing. It was almost like he wanted to be Drake. And then he got to live out being Drake.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then he's like, I'm done, blah, blah. And then he comes back out. He's like, you know what? Let's all take selfies. So everyone started rushing the stage. Like, people were leaving. Then he was like a rock star, bro. He's like giving people high fives. And like, it was literally like a musician, you know? And he was pulling people's phones, like taking videos of himself with people's phones, giving the phones back. And then the video I sent you, because me and my sister were like, oh, let's see how close we can get. So we got out, and then he like pointed to a crowd where nobody was there, and then he was a man of the people. He went to the crowd, and then he got off stage and started walking through all of us. And then people were like freaking out. I was like, dude, this is like some rock star stuff, bro. You know?
I always feel like when they do that, it's I'm looking for their safety.
It's like, it's security. It's security with them.
But still, you're still walking through the crowd.
For sure. Yeah. No, No, but they loved him.
No, I know.
People,
no, I know. But it's like there's levels of love where it's like you still keep in your he's still a person versus like
no, but that's what was weird.
Jumping right onto him. It's like that's kind of like there's different levels of people express that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like if he's more famous, you're saying.
Yeah, it's like how I'm saying like you don't know the kind of crowd that you have. Like there could be individuals that are like just.
Oh, it was aunties, bro. It was like like you could tell. It was like nobody's gonna hurt you, bro. Like it's like
no, not about hurt. It's like getting onto you. It's like
no, they were doing that. They were doing that.
Well, I guess he was expecting it since he went into the crowd like that.
I think he was drunk.
Oh,
he was drinking. Remember? So the drinking session.
Oh, that makes sense.
One guy brought him like shots, and he was doing shots with the guy up there, and then people were bringing beers, so he's drinking the beers.
Okay.
And then Sunshine like, yo, look, he looks red faced. He was just. It was weird, man. It was like a weird man. I was actually thinking about like maybe I'd like tap him on the shoulder and be like, "Oh, you're awesome," but then I was like, "I don't know about the security guard, bro. Like, it's kind of weird." But he passed right in front of me, you know.
Yeah.
And what was weird is like he's actually really tall, even though he makes a lot of short jokes. I'm like, "You're like 5'10", bro. What are you talking about?"
Well, technically, in American standards, 5'10" is short.
I guess so. Like, but like I heard Kevin Hart's like 5'3", so he's like really tiny. Yeah. So like, but yeah, it was a weird night. And then he was like, with the people he brought beers with, he was like, taking photos with them. Like, mind you, this is during the set.
Yeah.
It was so random.
It's not a normal. It's not what you were expecting when you're going in.
Some people were like leaving actually during that thing. Like they realized like, oh, he's got nothing, and then when he admitted he had nothing, it became more obvious that he had nothing. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so weird. And he's like, why does it feel like Joe Coy unplugged? Because he's like unplugged, you know, those acoustic where they like musicians play with acoustic sets, because he had no material. So he was just like, he like literally sat down and just started having conversations with people too in the audience. Like he sat on the speaker and I was like, you know,
that's,
I don't even know if that's like
right. I don't know.
You know, it's like we paid so much money for this, bro. Like what?
I don't know. Yeah, it's like.
And he's doing tours. This is a tour. It's not like a one show thing. So I'm like, you're gonna go city to city.
I feel like it's not a good. You can do that maybe in the last 10 minutes or like last 15 minutes or something. But it's like the whole thing. You didn't really have much to work on or show as material. I think that could leave
us feeling bad.
Yeah, I think that in general. Yeah, like it's hard to say like. Depends on, I guess, who your real true fans are. They don't care about what you're doing. They just like you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I feel like that's what it kind of was. Like the people that left were not fans. Yeah. But then all of us.
I don't want to say necessarily fans, but it's like we were expecting a comedy show. Like we were expecting what a comedy show is.
Yeah, right. You expected some sort of routine. Mm-hmm. You know? Okay, sorry to cut this short, but Tara's downstairs. I gotta help her with Costco stuff. So we'll end it. Hold on, sorry about that. 1 second. Okay, yeah. So we're in agreement that was a little weird. It's like you're paying all of this money.
I mean, you've been to more comedy sets. So.
This was the first time that nobody's had a set. It was, and then him to admit, like, I'm writing right now. It was like, what?
Right. I mean, you can even do the writing thing, but it's also like
at least have something.
At least have something there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I gotta go. All right. Take it easy, bitch.
Yeah.
Peace. Bye. All right, hope you enjoyed that episode. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, all those fun things, and check out our sponsors, Zenro Clothing Co., Portian Bakery, and Podbean. Take it easy, fish.
Peace.